Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Better Divorce Podcast. I'm your host, Paulette Rigo, CEO and founder of the Better Divorce Podcast and Better Divorce Academy and #1 best-selling book, Better Divorce Blueprint, the book, the workbook, the audiobook, and the online course that I'm so excited is launching in September. So welcome back. For about 10 years, I have decided that I want to give back. And the best way to give back is to help people who are navigating divorce, whether at the very beginning of the overwhelm and confusion, all the way to the should I date again? Get through it wiser. So today I invited an attorney and mediator and the founder of Netsquire. His name is John Nachlinger. I said it wrong, but Nachlinger. And even though he's originally from Texas, he lives in New Jersey. So he must love cold weather. And those of you that know me know I hate it. But welcome to the podcast. I am so glad you're here. We're going to dive into a lot of juicy topics about men and divorce today. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to start a little bit about your background. So I mentioned that you're an attorney, a mediator, and the founder of Netsquire. It's a New Jersey law firm redefining how families divorce with peace and purpose. Tell us a little bit about, did you always want to practice family law, or was that a conscious decision, or it just fell into it?
It just fell into my lap, basically. It's one of those things where sometimes life chooses you. I didn't seek out to become a family law attorney. I knew I wanted to litigate and be in court, but I didn't necessarily want to be a family law attorney. But my first job out of law school was working for a family court judge. And then after that, got into a law firm. And as they say, the rest is history. I mean, I've been doing this for now 23 years. And for the last 12 years, I've had my own firm. So, like with all things, when you work for someone, you sort of do what you're told to do and you do what that job is. And then when I got my own firm, I decided after doing this for so long that I wanted a different direction. And I really wanted to really help people resolve their divorces in a different way. So I started looking at myself as a professional problem solver as opposed to an attorney, and started getting more and more into mediation, alternative dispute resolution, and then decided that it was time to create a law firm that was really divorced, no pun intended, from the old way of doing things. The whole court system, the whole, file something, pay attorneys hourly, go fight. So I created this firm called Netsquire, where we really are concentrating on flat fee divorce, and really focusing on mediation at the very beginning, where there's no attorneys involved, where two people just come in, sit down, and resolve everything.
I am inspired by that because I see a shift in the positivity and the experience and ultimately the outcome when the firm, the attorney, depending on whether it's a solopreneur firm or it's one of those massive firms with hundreds, no exaggeration, of attorneys, when there is that shift from old school plaintiff, defendant, lawsuit, litigation, there's still a very concrete procedural path you have to walk down of making it legit and final and all that. Don't misunderstand me, everyone, that I'm saying you can just, usurp and bypass all that. But the experience doesn't need to be so dramatic, contentious, expensive, and just traumatic. It really can be. And kudos to you for wanting to have that chutzpah, that courage, that guts to step out on your own and say, I want to create a different experience. Not everybody has that, being an independent minded person in this world of divorce is unique. John, I have to, commend you for that. So I don't know if he's blushing a little bit, but if you're listening to the audio, but I really, it is nice. And I want everyone to know, do your homework, try to find the right match, right, for you, like your demeanor, your situation, your personality, and theirs. And what is really the experience that you're looking for? There are newer type, maybe, 23 years is a long time. And I don't know, I think you said 12 years. Was it 12 years you started your firm?
About 12 years ago, yeah.
Okay. So 12 years ago, I don't know if you got struck by lightning or if there was a particular case that like said, like, was there a tipping point for you of like wanting to get out of the old mode and create the new mode? What happened that made that shift
Yeah.
so relevant?
So there were really two sort of tipping points in my career. One's when I did my own firm, and that was really more of a um, working for somebody else, really bending over backwards, making sure everything was going on, but not being able to control what kinds of cases I was taking,
Mm,
how the litigation was going forward, having somebody else make all these promises to clients that could not possibly be fulfilled, which is what attorneys do all the time. They overpromise their clients at the very beginning. And so that was the first thing that happened. And the second thing that happened, which was a little bit more recently in 2019, is I had a 27-day trial
oh,
that literally took years off of my life, drained me to my core, was the worst experience of my entire life. And after that, I decided I was done litigating. I wasn't doing that game anymore. I was done. The result was a lot of appellate practice, going back and forth for years and years and years, a case that went on for basically 8 years. And it was too much. And that case, like so many cases that I had dealt with, should have been resolved quickly and amicably. And so I started to refocus in that most everyone thinks I need to go hire an attorney and that attorney needs to go do something. And they look at their spouse like an adversary from the very beginning. And that's such the wrong way to look at a divorce. And people have to recognize that there's the emotion of why you're getting divorced. And then there's the business work of actually how you divide your life. And they are two separate things. And if you can get someone to bifurcate those things in their mind, which I know is easier said than done, but if you can get them to bifurcate those things and say, okay, listen, I know I hate his guts. I know he's an asshole. I know she cheated on me with, her boss, whatever the situation is. If you can get past that and say, okay, listen, we can sit down with somebody, even if it's in separate rooms on Zoom, in breakout rooms, we can sit down with somebody for, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours and literally go one by one through everything and just figure out how to do this so we can just be done with each other. That a lot of people will take that road if they even know it exists. And that was the issue. People didn't know it existed. They thought they had to go hire an attorney and go the traditional route because as society, we all have these preconceived notions in our head about what should or should not happen. So when I realized that, I knew that I had to create a firm whose entire identity was surrounding this so that it would attract all those people out there. They're like, hey, I don't want our family to spend 30, 40, or $50,000 to these attorneys when we can get everything resolved for $5,000 together and be done. Our kids aren't ruined. Our kids don't hate us. Our kids are not destroyed by the system of their parents fighting and knowing that they're going to court next week and they're going to court to fight about them. So once I realized that I was done with litigating and I knew this was a better option, I just threw myself into it. And something you said earlier is so true. Attorneys look at me like I have 5 heads. They really, and a lot of them don't like what I'm doing because it's
mhm.
breaking the mold. And I don't care. I really don't care. One thing I learned to do years ago was just to ignore what everyone else thinks. I know what I'm doing. I know what my mission is, and I'm doing it. And as long as I'm happy with it, I really don't care what anyone else thinks. And our clients could not be happier with the process, as evidenced by the fact that they're telling everyone, wow, there's a firm here that you get a real attorney who's very experienced, who can help us resolve everything very quickly. And yeah, so I've been loving it, and I feel so good knowing that people, yeah, they save money. That's great, but they're better co-parents, they're having better lives, they're getting through the bad part faster. I mean, you've heard stories, people are living together for like 18 months while they're going through a divorce. And, they're having their attorneys send each other letters and they're living in the same house. It's ridiculous. And there is a better way. I love the name of your podcast because there is a way to have a better divorce, and it's in front of everyone's face. You can make the decision whether you want to have a bad divorce or a better divorce. No one else but you and your spouse can make that decision.
Well, my heart is singing and I love everything you just said, but I do want to go back just a bit. My divorce was 12-day trial. And when you said 27, I wanted to vomit. So I could only imagine what 12 to 24 plus 3 more days, two plus, double that experience. The cost, and of course, a 12-day trial for me was 9 months. I can only imagine what a 27-day was of duration. Let's just say it was well over a year plus. I know it was. So, people go, well, you would think if it's a 12-day trial, by the way, you don't know it's 12 days when you start, they book you for like 3 or 4, and then they add a few days and they add a few days and so on and so forth. But you would think if you did know at the beginning that if it were 12 days, it would be Monday through Friday, and Monday, Tuesday, right? Well, wrong. So I could only imagine the trauma for the client, but also the impact on you and your staff, because you know more about the family than the family knows about the family by the litigating. Just all the cross-examination, the evidence, the discovery, the interrogatories, depositions, subpoenas, sua sponte order, gatekeeper, guardian ad litem, private investigators. If you have to go through that type of fastidious untangling the ball of yarn, I call it, I can only imagine the toll it took on you. I know myself when I work with clients who are in trial, because, and I do use the word coach because I did do several trainings with the word coach in it. So I am a certified divorce coach. Yes, sometimes I call myself a strategist too, or a cheerleader, a quarterback, a doula. I don't really care what label you put on me, as long as, a BFF, I hold their hand, lock arms with them, and step by step by unfortunately step, get divorced with them. So whether that's mediation or a trial or, God forbid, an appeals process like I went through, you really do need to have somebody that can do it with you every step of the way, because it's so draining. But I mention that because it takes a toll on me, and I've had to learn, it's really helped me being an ERYT 500, an experienced yoga practitioner, where I have a very succinct, dedicated practice where I'm able to not take on the energy of other people. And even though I am still a bit of an empath, and I do feel like a sponge and take on the energy and the experience, the visceral kinesthetic experience, I'm able to kind of wash my hands of that and watch it go down the drain emotionally, because it does take a toll on you. He's shaking his head. Yeah. And so I can see why that 27-day trial made you say, never, I don't want to swear, blank, blank, blank again. Right.
Oh yeah. Let me tell you something. It did take, I believe, probably about 10 months is how long
Okay.
it went on, which, it should have taken probably longer, but we were just able to sort of piece together a lot of days. But I had to deal with 35 or 40 other cases in between all of these
Correct.
dates.
Yeah.
And, there were other court appearances, other hearings, other things going on. And what's interesting is people don't, we're all humans. Like you have to re-prepare, and that re-preparing cost your clients money. But that case also was evidence of many other parts of the system that really, it wasn't just the 27-day trial. My client was wonderful. He was absolutely a wonderful person. His wife was, the reason we went to trial was she was vindictive and she wouldn't agree to anything, like anything, not even dividing a single account. Like, she would not agree to anything. She hired what everyone would consider to be a shark or a bulldog attorney, whose entire existence was just to be adversarial about everything. You couldn't agree to anything with him. And then the judge, who was a newer judge at the time, really made life also difficult. I'll tell you just a very small side story. I got my first and only UTI during this trial. I didn't even know what it was. I had to, it was this courthouse was in away from my house a little bit. So I would spend the night in a hotel before trial so I could get there early and be, not stressed out. And I woke up one morning with this high fever. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I was like sweating, shaking. I was in a bad place. I went in, this was day 13 or 14 of trial, something like that. I go in and the court would not adjourn the trial for me. And I was ill. I went in there. Finally, at lunchtime, the judge finally called it off and said, okay, clearly Mr. Nachlinger needs to go see a doctor. But when I realized that like the system didn't care about us as attorneys, other attorneys are just there to be raging assholes. And then the whole process, it was a combination of all of that together. I was like, I'm done. I don't want to be part of this process anymore. People still need to get divorced. Let's figure out how to do it differently and educate everyone so that they understand to do it differently. And that's why I talk about this case all the time, because that could be you. That could be you without you even knowing it. That could easily be you if you hire the wrong attorney, you get the wrong process, and if you and your spouse don't start trying to resolve things quickly, because I think you were talking plaintiff and defendant. It's when it's just you, when it's John and Jane sitting around the table trying to resolve things, it's a whole different ball of wax than when it's John v. Jane in a court pleading. And people don't realize that. It's a psychological thing. It's like a different animal once you become part of the court system.
Yes, and you don't know until you get involved in it that when you file, you're suing your partner.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lawsuit. People just think, oh, I'll file for divorce. No big deal. Whatever. Like, I'll go get my nails done. I'll book a vacation. I'll get a divorce. I'll file. It seems so, not simple, but harmless, right? Just sort of, no big deal. What's the problem? Until you realize, wow, I just sued my spouse and everything is now under the microscope of the judicial system. And whether you're spending money or saving money or dissipating funds, or, you can't sell your house and everything is status quo, and there's ramifications. And, we don't have time to get into all that. And I know that's not the focus of the conversation. But once you do pull the plug and you are litigating, you are suing your spouse. And not only does the emotional, psychological, mental, spiritual energy change, but so does the judicial, legal, financial side and co-parenting. So yes, you brought back a lot of memories. So it's been a while now. And as most of you know, I'm happily remarried and I believe in love. So with that said, deep breath, a very small percentage of cases do go to trial, about 3% of cases. So 97% of cases do not go to trial. But the 3% that do, and again, that's a national average. It's not a science by any mean. They need to. There's certain circumstances, or there really is. Now, whether this particular case or my case needed to go to trial, that is still up for discussion. But there are those cases that really do need some intervention and opinion and witnesses and all that goes along with that. But tell me a little bit about your focus with creating Divorce Shield, where you created a platform that helps men navigate divorce. I don't per se focus on men or women because divorce affects the entire family. And I think because I am a woman and I was a ballet teacher and my website originally was very pink, and I was a birth doula and I ran the children's division of a modeling agency. I know a lot of women, so naturally I would say 75%, although I think it is lessening, of my current clients that I work with are women. But the men that reach out to me is growing. And that makes me happy that more and more men are seeing the work I do and you do as valuable and beneficial to the family themselves and ultimately their children if they have it, instead of just, hiring that bulldog and shark. So talk a little bit about what Divorce Shield is and how do you help men specifically? Because it's different.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to that. I just wanted to tell you real quick about the 3% figure, which is the case in New Jersey too. It's 3% they go to trial, but it's a large percentage more. They get right up to the edge of trial and go through a
Correct.
long
Yeah.
process. It's really bad. I feel bad telling people 3% because you can solve a horrible divorce and still not go through trial. It's
True. True.
but
Very,
but
very
getting
good
to
point.
yeah, but getting to men. So during the pandemic, I started to talk to some of my male clients because I was just trying to figure out different ways to help people. And the one thing I started to realize was that a lot of men feel very alone during the divorce. Men are typically not the social creatures that women are. They don't typically go out with their male friends to sit and talk about how they're feeling about things and go through personal issues. And during the pandemic, we were all even more isolated. And so I sort of thought about how can I help these guys develop a community where they feel safe about talking about what they're going through. And I started looking around. I had never thought of ever being a divorce coach. I started looking around at all the other websites, and most of the divorce coaches I saw were women. Most of their websites had language that would appeal to women, both in colors and in terms of the copy of what was actually on the websites themselves. And I was like, I don't think that there's a lot out there that's speaking to men specifically. So
Right. I agree. I mean, I
yeah,
would say probably 80% to 90% of divorce coaches are women. Yeah.
they are. And I know there's a lot of men that feel comfortable talking to a woman about what they're going through, but there's a lot of men that feel more comfortable talking to a man. And it's just like having a therapist. It's just like an attorney. Some people want the same gender as them for whatever reason. They feel more comfortable. It doesn't At the end of the day, we have to make sure that there's options out there for everybody. And so I initially started a podcast called Get Divorced Without Getting Screwed, which was geared towards talking to men about divorce and actually speaking to men about divorce. Even though about a third of our listeners are women, so I started that, and I developed like an online divorce preparation academy. I think it was what I initially called it, and it was really just a preparation course, where basically teaching guys how to organize their finances, try to organize their minds around their kids, like teach them to figure out who their kids' principals are, what their doctors' names are, who their kids' best friends are, and who their parents are, like basic information that would come back to bite them in litigation if they had a contested custody case. I wanted to make sure that they were being prepared, and then protect them from bogus domestic violence claims, which I've seen this for 20 plus years, people using our domestic violence statutes as a sword rather than a shield. So I'm very cognizant about protecting. Actually, I want everyone to protect themselves from those claims, because
Correct.
that's really the best way to get someone out of the house. It's really the only way to get someone out of the house is to get a restraining order against them, and then help them with their mindset. So I did that. And then I realized that really a lot of these guys needed either group settings or they needed one-on-one someone to talk to. So I started dabbling in that one-on-one uh, contact with people. And I realized, number one, I really enjoyed it because I was able to use all of my years as a divorce attorney and seeing what actually happens, how the sausage is made, but really how it impacts my clients. And so I could talk to people about that from that point of view, and also help people understand how to make decisions, what decisions they should make, and actually be sort of a companion to their legal team, and explain why their attorney is doing what they're doing, or what their attorney really meant, or actually walk through things like how to talk to their spouse, like review text messages, or here comes an email from your spouse, let's talk about how we're going to respond to that, and sort of do some of the things that really attorneys aren't really meant to do, even though clients a lot of times think their attorney is supposed to be their best friend, their therapist, their emergency contact. I mean, people go crazy with attorneys. Like,
Of course.
your attorney's there for one purpose: to help you get divorced and to get as good of a resolution, like from the financial and custody perspective, as possible. They're not there to be your friend. They're not there to be your therapist. and people use their attorneys for all these things. So that was the genesis of it, and it has really sort of taken different shapes as I've proceeded. You and I were talking before we started recording that I don't call myself a coach. I really don't like that term, even though with men it works really well, because I can talk about, I'm like a basketball coach. We're on the side of the court, we're drawing up a play, but I can't do the play for you. You've got to go out and do it. If the play didn't work, come back and we'll draw up something else and you can go back. So they understand the word coach, but really what I was focused to do was to take that guy, and I know you know this guy who just was told by their wife, I want a divorce. And they are shooken because in their mind, they couldn't see it coming, even though we all know there were probably 100 different times that their wife made it very clear to them that the marriage was in trouble. Because I think we all know one very important fact, which is that someone cannot resolve their divorce until they come to terms with the fact they're getting divorced. Until they and if you can't come to terms with that and get past the why is this happening to me, there's no way you can be logical about resolving your case. There's no way you can say like, well, this person wants a divorce, so why should I have to pay alimony? Or, those sorts of things. So I decided that I needed to start to focus on that guy who really just needs somebody to help them understand why it's happening. And then to kind of piggyback back to our beginning of our conversation about mediation and, trying to do an alternative way, then I try to explain to those guys about the different ways to get divorced and how to talk to their spouse about, okay, can we try to go to a mediator? Can we do this rather than going to get an attorneys and going down this war path? So I kind of blend all of these things into one. And I talk to so many other people who do similar things, but it's what I do just a little bit different in that I really try to focus on the pre-divorce, trying to get someone in that right mindset. And then once the divorce starts, sometimes I work with guys, sometimes I don't. It sort of just depends. And then once they get to a point, I find someone else for them, a life coach, maybe whoever. And I say, listen, yeah, go. Because I know what I'm good at, and I don't want to. There's other people that are great at other things. So I always want the best for people. And so that's the genesis of Divorce Shield, was making sure that guys are in the right mindset so they can get divorced without getting screwed. And again, that phrase, which I've loved forever. I don't know how I came up with it, but what does not getting screwed mean? It's all in your mind. It's all in your mind. Because getting screwed is in the eyes of the beholder. Did I get screwed? Some people think if they had to pay $1, they got screwed. So my whole view is, let's shift the mindset so that you can look at divorce a different way. Don't feel like you got screwed. Look at it as the closing of one chapter, the beginning of another chapter. And stop the poor me, why is this happening to me stuff that so many guys get bogged down in.
Yes, because when you're still wallowing in shock and denial, and then the sadness and the anger and the negotiating and the bargaining to try to, let's go to therapy, let's fix it, I'll change, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again, what are you talking about, that never happened, that's a whole nother show. Everybody has their shock and denial, that's normal. Like you see a car wreck, you're like, whoa, you're going to look at it 5 times just to make sure you didn't hallucinate, right? But then once the shock and denial, the shock wears off, there's the, is this really happening to me? How dare this be happening to me? There's that resentment and frustration and anger. And obviously this is sort of the psychological, mental, emotional side of it, not the judicial, legal side. But, once they get past therapy is just kicking the can down the road. They're just telling me what it is I want to hear, so I'll shut up and agree. Maybe using a therapist to document things. Be careful with that. And a lot of people say, yeah, I'll go to therapy just to kind of, change things behind the scenes, give them more time, kind of buy more time to get their ducks in the row, or make copies of financial statements. And therapy can be very beneficial, but it can also be delay tactic. So that could
Mhm.
be something to really work with the coaches, figuring out like, well, why are we going to therapy? What is the goal? And is it the right therapist? What is the goal of the therapist? But then once they get to that, they're not so angry anymore. Maybe they've done, throwing plates, swearing, cursing, finger pointing, and driving really fast, and putting hot sauce on all their food, and dare I say, drinking tequila, all the other things that they need to do to get out of their system of anger and frustration. And then there's the sadness, right, of watching the wedding video, looking at the photographs, listening to, Elton John music, and, it's just sort of sad music, of like, you get to this fact of like acceptance, but it takes a lot of surrender and letting go before you get to acceptance. And that is not something that I think men do as well as women. Um, Although I do see that a lot of women hang on to the house and the children and the image and the picket fence and the white dress and all the fairy tale images of what the marriage was supposed to be. And of course, I live in Georgia, so down in the Bible Belt, we have to deal with all of the religious, cultural ideas of the
Mhm.
demise of a relationship. And I grew up Catholic in Boston, where we're not supposed to say the D word. That's like illegal. So I remember even saying to my parents when I was little, like all fresh teenagers, why are you guys still married? Like I was probably 12. Who hasn't said that to their parents when they're fighting or something? We don't really mean it, but we're 12. And I just remember my father saying, shut your mouth, young lady, and I'm like, wait, what did I say? I didn't know it was like a taboo thing. So but when you grow up with that kind of an image and you're thinking about divorce, you thought, uh-oh, I'm gonna rot in hell. So there's a lot of childhood ideas of, did you come from a divorced family? What did you see divorce movies? Like, did Kramer versus Kramer mess with your mind, and War of the Roses? Who knows what people all come to the table with ideas about what marriage should look like and what divorce is. And until you really have the realistic idea of, well, this is how it looks, it can be very scary. It's so scary, John. And dealing with those emotions, for men or people that just sweep that under the rug, elephant in the living room, they want to dance around. And of the 21 reasons couples divorce, people don't even want to talk about the reasons couple divorce. As you mentioned, those red flags that maybe they probably were pink at the time, they weren't quite as noticeable. But once you start really, yeah, I guess that really was a problem. It can be hard if you have a place to um, um, throw ideas off of, and kind of bat around being a thinking partner. So you're making choices that are smart and not emotional. It's incredibly helpful. So I'm thrilled that you've done this for men specifically. Now, I'm assuming you work with people not just in New Jersey in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I work with people all over the world. Several different countries, all over every state, basically. But it really, people when they're going through a divorce, they really get so fixated on why is this happening. You cannot do I call it the postmortem. You can't do the postmortem while you're in the middle of the divorce. That's good. That's a good thing for therapy. That's what therapy is all about. Backward looking, like what happened to get us to this point. And by the way, everyone going through a divorce, if you want to have a good, fulfilling relationship moving forward, I highly recommend you consider therapy just so you can sort of identify the part you played in your marriage, what you did to contribute to the marriage not working, so that you don't just repeat history again. I mean, I have divorced several people more than once from different people. And
Mhm.
strangely, every single one of them, their second spouse they're divorcing reminded me a lot of their first spouse. So, I mean, it's just something you really need to think about. I mean, listen, everybody, men don't get too caught up on the emotion. I think it's a lot of pride. It's just a lot of pride. There is a lot of fear. There's a lot of pride in, that whole like I did everything right. I went to work, I provided for my family, and why is this happening to me? So it's really more I almost think people are in shock sometimes. It's like, it's like when you're in a bad accident and you don't feel all the pain because you're in so much shock. I have to get them out of the shock so that they can acknowledge there's pain, but realize that, listen, we're going to fix you and you're going to be fine going forward. But we have to get you through this process because it's going to happen whether you like it or not. Divorce happens. I mean, people don't understand. I still hear people all the time saying, well, I'll agree to get a divorce. I'm like, well, that's nice. It doesn't matter whether you agree or not. Your spouse gets a divorce. If they want a divorce, they get a divorce. Welcome to today's world. I mean, I know it used to be different, but welcome to today's world. Just like I have to tell my female clients, if dad wants to have significant time with the kids, he's going to get significant time with the kids. Like, this is not, 1960. This is a different world. So everyone has to, and I think you talked about the house, like clinging on like emotionally to like the house and things. That's all emotion. And that's why divorce is so difficult. It's 95% emotion, 5% law. And these coaching is really the missing piece. And I wish more attorneys understood how coaching really can help them do their jobs better. It can make their lives easier. It can make their clients better clients. It can help them resolve cases more easily, and they can stop fighting about things like, I fought one time about a crock pot. I am not joking. A crock pot. And guess what we did? At lunch one day, while we were sitting in the courthouse for the third straight day, fighting about a crock pot and a fishing pole. It was a crock pot and a fishing pole. Went to Target and bought a new crock pot and a new fishing pole, brought them in, plopped it down in front of each one of them, and said, and with the divorce papers on top of that, the settlement agreement, now sign. Because it's
stubborn.
And it's all emotion. You have to get past the emotion or your divorce will be horrible. It will be horrible. And that's why I go back to what I said earlier. Nobody can make your divorce bad but you. I mean, your spouse too, but the way you approach it can have an impact on how your spouse approaches it too. If you decide to go with all guns a-blazing, hiring like some shark attorney who's just going to start firing off missiles right at the beginning, what do you think your spouse is going to do? They're going to go find somebody that can
retaliate.
So just if you're starting a divorce, the best advice is decide what kind of divorce you want. Forget it. Yes, it's happening. I know it sucks. Decide what kind of divorce you want. Try to pick the right process. Get the right attorney that's going to actually listen to what you want. Or you will have I think you said yours is a 13-day trial or something, or a 27-day trial. Yeah. That's where you're heading. You could potentially go there. And you have the ability, you have the power to change it right at the beginning.
Yes.
And that is the one thing I can't say it enough. Like, I cannot say it enough. Make a decision and you'll have a better divorce. Keep using your podcast name.
I know, it's funny. Well, originally, Elizabeth Stanley and I started the radio show in Boston, as I was telling you earlier, John, and it was called the Thriving in Chaos podcast or show, Thriving in Chaos. And then, of course, it changed to podcast. And when I moved back to the States, I said, yeah, it's not really resonating with me. And then I was like, it makes sense. Better Divorce Academy, Better Divorce Blueprint, and Better Divorce Podcast. So it's got a little running theme, as you can see. And it's true. I mean it. I would have named it the Best Divorce Podcast, but the only best divorce is not to have one. But if you do have to go through a divorce, make it better. So with that, thank you, John. You've said so many things, and I hope everyone took notes. And he's easy to find. But what is the best way for people to like you, follow you, and dare I say stalk you on social media?
But you can find the law firm at Get Happy Divorce. You can also find us at Divorce Shield, the coaching program, or you can find me personally at John_Nachlinger. I really just try to everything we talked about in this podcast. You'll see that's all the social media content is exactly the same thing. Just what is mediation? How does it help you? How does it impact you? How do you talk to your spouse about entering into a mediation process? And for every person that I can get into mediation, that's one less person that's going to have a bad divorce and go through this horrible process. And each one that goes through the better process makes me a happy person.
Well, you heard it from the expert, everyone. You can have a better divorce. So you are responsible, take ownership for it, take an active role, and don't lay down and play dead. You got this. So thank you, John. And remember, it's your responsibility to make it better. So until next time, I'll see you later.